Well, hello guys, Abel here back with another video. Believe it or not, it's a rather large topic. So I was thinking about what sort of video I should make my second video upon returning. It would have felt slightly strange to just, as if nothing happened, start talking about some fitness topic like how to build muscle after a long layoff, or how I broke through the 180 kilo barrier on RDLs, which I also did since my last video. I'm very happy to report. So I decided to not battle myself too long over this, and to actually not cover a fitness related video for my next video either, and tackle one of the topics which kept resurfacing as of late, and to really dedicate one full video to just this topic and this topic only, and that is video games. And more specifically, how something that was initially so incredibly useful and valuable to me, something that allowed me to escape from certain problems for at least periods of time, which otherwise I had a real difficulty dealing with, it then became something incredibly destructive that sabotaged productivity, fitness, long-term visions of my future, and how it was, I mean, if it was not the thing that ended it, it was certainly at the very least was a massive nail in the coffin of a 7-year-long relationship. And I guess more specifically, how I developed a very severe case of video game addiction. There's one thing though that I do want to talk about in the beginning of all of this, and this is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot, that I think there is a shared trait with a lot of addictions, and this video game addiction, I think, is no exception to that. And that shared thing is the discrepancy between how these addictions actually look like in the real world, and then how people who are just from the outside looking in, having not gone through it, are thinking about it, how they imagine it, and then of course how all of this is being communicated to them through the media and over the internet. And so I'm going to illustrate this both with my example, but first I actually want to make a slight tangent on heroin addiction. That is not something that I have experience with, but I do remember as a teenager reading about it and hearing about it from some people, and I just found the whole concept to be fascinating, how you can become addicted through just one use of the drug. I don't know if that's really the case. Some reports say that it is, some reports say that it's not quite like that. And so I remember finding this documentary on YouTube about heroin, and I was very intrigued. I was very, very curious to learn about this more. And I got very upset because after about half an hour or so, it became obvious that basically there's nothing in this documentary that's happening other than showing close-ups of people shooting needles slowly into their forearms. Like that was all there was to that movie. Needle into the skin. Like, look how painful it is. Oh my God. Like, do you want to be around this? Like, that was all that this documentary had to offer. And this, of course, is a very lazy approach to take from the movie maker's perspective, as well as a very counterproductive thing to do. Because what they should be showing to the viewers, and what the real scare tactic should be, is not the painful needle, but it's actually showing how amazing this heroin thing makes people feel, and how because of that they would be willing to let go of everything and anything that was important to them and sabotage their entire life just so they can get hold of this heroin compound one more time. So yeah, one might say that this is a riskier approach to take, but I think that if this is done intelligently, it can actually be a lot more effective. And I think that this whole heroin analogy is very appropriate if we look at something like video games. Because, I mean, we do know that video game addiction is a real thing that strikes certain people. But of course, if you think about a video game addicted person, unless you've been there yourself or someone who was very close to you, what sort of person are you imagining? You're thinking of your prototypical incel, right? Living in his mom's basement. Okay, you cannot tell that by looking at him, but covered in pimples head to toe, some really ugly looking goggles, hair has not been washed for the past year or decade, probably never been to the gym his entire life, probably never had a girlfriend his entire life or boyfriend. Really, he is just sitting in his room, and by now probably he has found some method of being able to avoid using the toilet as well, because he's just dumping and pissing in buckets. Lizike, döntsük már, hogy merre mész. Nem szeretnél lemenni? Nem. No. Whereas the reality is that you can slip into pretty hardcore video game addiction without being anything like that. I was a very normal dude, for example, something like this or exactly like this. I was going to the gym regularly. I was in very good shape. I had a beautiful partner. I think I was dressing okay. I know some people specifically who would strongly disagree, but let's go with my version for now. Frankly, I had no intention whatsoever of becoming anything like this prototypical incel dude that I was portraying. I was simply going into something that was enjoyable to me, something that allowed me to take my mind off of things that were really troubling me. And really, simply, I just wanted to use an entertainment tool, which I had the luxury of being able to afford and have and use for the purposes that it was advertised for and designed for. Now, in the year 2024, I played somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 hours, probably. In the first hour, I was certainly nothing like an incel. I was actually doing quite well. After 100 hours, I was still nothing like an incel. After 1,000 hours, I was still nothing like that. After 3,000 or 4,000 hours, I'm not saying that I was an incel, but at that point, the road of getting there and how I would get there started to really crystallize. It was no longer unimaginable that I could get there, in the not so distant future even. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to these video game addicted folks, what we tend to focus on when we observe them is the incelness, just how big of a loser this person is. Whereas what we should be focused on, just like in the case of heroin, is what makes someone get to this point whereby they would sacrifice everything and anything in life just so they can keep on doing this thing that they're addicted to. And the answer, just like in the case of heroin, is that video games are actually really freaking amazing. Video games are an unbelievably remarkable invention and development of our society. And they're so incredible that you should really, really be careful around them, especially if you're someone like me who is quite prone to addiction. I'd always known that about myself. I just didn't think that video games could be an issue for me. And why not? Well, I mean, that is sort of what this video will be about. So I guess let's just start off by saying that I've always had a console in my room ever since I was 15 and a half years old, at which point I got my first Xbox 360 for Christmas from my parents. Since that day, I basically never had a period in my life when I would not have an Xbox or some sort of console in my bedroom. Not only that, I would even say that I did not have an extended period since I was 15 and a half in which I would not play video games at all. I was basically always playing them. Yet I never ever had an issue with any sort of addiction-like behavior. I never once missed out on any sort of cool, fun activity, which I was interested in otherwise because of video games. I never once became less interested in any of my longer-term meaningful goals like my fitness goals because of video games. I never considered not going to the gym because playing video games was so much fun. So I just never even considered the possibility that this whole video game addiction thing could be an issue for me. In hindsight, of course, it's quite easy to see why I was seemingly so immune to video game addiction for so long, and then how it became a huge problem seemingly overnight. And that is simply that the video games, or video game, I should say, that I was playing with was just simply not that good. I was really only playing with one game and one game only, and that was FIFA, or these days it's called EAFC. That's all I was playing with. The good thing about that game is that you can sort of zone out while you're playing. You can hold long conversations while you're playing. Probably you're not going to have your best ever performances, especially if you're playing online with that game, which I never did, which is a big caveat. I was always playing career mode or manager mode earlier on. But after some time, it just becomes incredibly stale and boring. Really, if you play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, you just cannot bother playing the 7th. You know exactly what's going to happen in that match as well. And so it was always this nice self-limiting thing. Just before I could venture over to the territory of, man, you're really spending a lot of time playing with this, probably you're just naturally gonna get bored of it, and then you will just stop. And then you probably won't want to touch it again for a while. So basically each year what I would do is that I would buy that upcoming year's FIFA version or the upcoming football season's corresponding FIFA version. And then until the next season's FIFA, I would play with that game and with that game only. Now, one pivotal moment was when I bought my PS4, which was quite late, actually. It was in 2021 during one of the COVID lockdowns, so that I could do something with my time. And when I bought that PS4, I bought 2 games with it, actually. I bought the FIFA for that season, which was a very different game for PS4, so I was excited to try that. And just for shits and giggles, I guess, I bought Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And this was a big moment because really in at least 10 years, this was the first time that I actually purchased a game that was not FIFA. Now, even though I purchased that game, I didn't actually touch that game, nor did I insert it into my console up until the beginning of 2024. Honestly, I don't even quite know what my motivation was for trying it out that time, but it doesn't even really matter. What I do remember is that it was a slow start. I didn't overly enjoy it in the beginning. I do remember my interest sort of peaking when I had my first attempts of beating some enemies in the game, which had some higher power score or rating than I did. So you could upgrade your character from level 1 all the way up until level 99. At this point in the game, I would have been like a 5, and this enemy was like a level 35. I remember that sort of intriguing me when I realized that, okay, I can level up and that I can even consciously work on doing things that helps me level up faster. And so at that point, I would check out a couple of YouTube videos, seeing how people are beating these high-level enemies. And then, of course, as I played the game more, I became a bit more experienced and got better at it as well. Just like with anything else in life, the more competent you are at something, the more likely you are to also find enjoyment in it. A couple of things that are worth mentioning in that game, which were just very effective at extending my gameplay hours beyond anything reasonable, were some of the progression features in that game. Some of these features, while not remarkable, they were intriguing enough and engaging enough so that I could easily tolerate some of the really obvious flaws of the game, many of which were actually the worst kind, the types of flaws that just flat out made you waste a lot more time. A good chunk of what made this game what it was that it was designed in a way so that certain things you could just not complete in a time-efficient manner. You just needed to spend a lot of empty time just basically doing chore work within the game. What is very notable, and I can remember this very clearly, is that when we took this family trip, I could not play with my console for 10 days, and I did not miss it whatsoever. I did not even think about it. I was perfectly fine occupying myself with other activities. I was having a good time, and I never really missed being able to play with my PS4. But one pivotal thing that happened around the time when we returned from this trip is that certain issues in my relationship with my ex now have really started to weigh down on me. I'm not trying to pose as the victim here. This was a communication issue. Really, looking back, if I could do one thing here, I would not have relented until we would have found some really competent therapist who could have helped us working through this. We did attempt, by the way, we did go to therapy twice, actually, we attempted, but unfortunately the professionals that we found were just not qualified enough. But we shouldn't have given up, and we should have pursued this relentlessly, and there would have been some hope for this. The thing is that this whole issue had been going on for a while, and I tried everything internally to deal with this, all kinds of strategies and mindsets and internal dialogues. So I just felt eternally lonely with this whole thing. And that was just really, really taking its toll on me. And honestly, at a certain point, I wanted nothing else but just some inner peace and silence. And just so that my mind could be left alone from all of this nonsense. I was so sick and tired of always having thoughts about this whole thing creeping in my lonely, sort of quiet, passive hours. Honestly, I really started to consider like the most drastic options just so that I could finally be free from all of this. And at that time, I did notice that when I was immersed in this game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I was focused on these missions and some of these riddles and non-obvious ways of progressing further in the game, it did actually become possible to not be thinking about these things. And that realization hit quickly. Having this thing, which so effectively took my mind off of all of these things, was just miraculous. I mean, it was such a blessing that it was not even a question that I was going to do more of this and a lot more of this. So that's exactly what I did. So the times of me playing with this game became more frequent, the hours became longer, zero guilty feelings, and it did serve its purpose. It did accomplish what I was using it for, but that did come at a price. And that price was that slowly other things which otherwise I would have used for releasing stress and to escape from these troubling thoughts, which were a lot healthier, like going to the gym, like going on walks, focusing, like setting new goals, exciting goals that could motivate me, getting myself into projects related to this channel or some business related thing, what have you. These sorts of things became less interesting, less exciting, and I just started seeing them as less valid ways of escaping from the uglier side of my everydays. And so I started skipping the gym more and more. I started thinking less and less about potential upcoming video ideas. I started to just think about fitness and anything related to it less in general. It just became less important to me on the whole. Now, it's probably no secret to anyone that not seeing sunlight, not getting fresh air, not moving, not working out, not exercising is not good for you. It's not good for any part of your being. It's not good for your physical health, and it's certainly not good for your mental health. And then we are just talking about these not so favorable lifestyle choices. We said nothing about video games yet, which is just another layer on top of all of this. So if you're an addictive personality like me, then a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a very bloated RPG game that is very conducive for playing countless hours, has the potential to become problematic. When you layer all of these lifestyle choices on top of that, you can very easily create a loop in which your situation is gonna get escalated rapidly. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, my mental health decline or mental well-being decline was astronomically fast. When I started playing with this game more intensely around the turn of the year, I was somewhat frustrated, but otherwise relatively together dude. By the time February rolled around, and certainly early March rolled around, I don't throw these terms around lightly, but I mean, I was damn near suicidal. As far as the magical impact of video games were concerned, which was that it was effective at distracting me from my problems, it was a situation akin to trying to mitigate a painful swollen big toe by slowly slicing off your foot. You are distracting yourself from the pain because you're creating even more pain somewhere else. But I think at that point it would be a stretch to say that you're very effectively remedying your issue. If the distraction strategy is effective, then it should have some longer term effect as well that you can observe. When I first started working out, for example, I was full of insecurities. And when I started working out, I noticed that not only during the gym session, not only afterwards, but in the following days as well, my general well-being, confidence, my outlook on life started to improve. It all took an upturn. Here, there was only one time when I observed these effects, and that was while I was actually playing. And I mentioned the game being a gigantic time suck and being designed in a way so that you have to waste time. Well, what are these time-sinking, empty, passive activities good for? To ruminate and dwell over things that are really bothering you. So, in retrospect, it's obvious that I actually spent very, very large chunks of my gaming sessions pretty much just sitting there fuming over the things that were really causing me all this upset. I did have my low periods before, but some of the dark thoughts that I had during this time were really unparalleled by anything that I would have had before. That, of course, begs the question, how did that not become clear to me? And how did it not dawn on me that, okay, like this approach is not the right one? Well, number one, the passive, empty, sort of boring times in the game were not the only times I've had. There were definitely times of fun and engagement and being zoned in. And secondly, yes, these times in the games are passive, but because they are not entirely passive, but you're sort of always in control of what's happening there, it was very effective at creating this experience, which basically made it possible to overlook all of this. I sort of started existing in this zombie-esque, not fully present, not fully aware kind of state. Nevertheless, when after about a good 700 hours of gameplay, I finally had nothing more to do in this game, I moved on to the next one. The game that came after this was something that I'm not going to be talking about that much, quite simply because it's probably the purest gaming experience that I would have had during this whole time. I would say that out of all the games that I played, this experience was probably the closest to the type of experience that you're supposed to have if you still want to maintain a healthy-ish relationship with gaming while still pouring in an unreasonable number of hours. I would also say that even though it's not my favorite game, objectively speaking, this is probably the game that I would rate the highest, and it was the best and greatest game that I have ever played. The game was The Ghost of Tsushima. Those of you who know will know why I say what I'm saying. It is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous game in every sense of the word. Visually stunning, breathtaking, the story, the music, absolutely beautiful. When I completed the game and the credits started rolling, I remember just sitting there on my sofa for a while and my face was covered in tears. I mean, it was, touching would be an understatement. It was an absolutely wonderful experience. Oh, and besides that, the gameplay experience itself, the combat, the movement mechanics, the controls, I mean, all of that was top notch. That game was just an absolute masterpiece, and I cannot speak highly enough of it. I mean, it's not only that I was hooked on it, my ex would frequently be sitting there with me and just watching and awing at what she was seeing. So I would say that if I had to name the game of the century, even though I know there are a lot more iconic games than Ghost of Tsushima, I would not have to think for very long. My pick would be this one. Why this game does not deserve a ton of airtime in this video is that out of all the games that I played with, this one probably had the lowest replayability. This was very much a complete it one time, enjoy it for what it is, suck out all the joy and beauty out of the game, and then really never touch it again, but remember the experience forever. It was that type of a game. All the other games that I played with, all the games that I spent the 500 and 700 and more hours with, all of them had excellent replayability. So much so that some of the games that I played with later on, they were designed in a way so that your first entire playthrough with the game, which could easily be well over 100 hours, they were calling that or considering that the tutorial section of the game. Level 1 just came after that, and that was their second playthrough. So those games were very much designed in a way so that you could spend easily over 1,000 hours with that game, no problem. This game was not like that. Replaying this game and binge playing it after you had completed it, it would sort of be akin to binge watching Lion King. Like imagine watching Lion King and then winding the tape back right to the beginning and watching it again. I mean, all the tears of joy. I mean, it's a wonderful experience, but do you really want to relive it again? So yeah, Ghost of Tsushima was wonderful, but it was time to look for a new game. And I would say that what came after this was a whole new chapter in my entire gaming journey. I mean, the type of gaming experience that I got into after all of this was on a whole different plane. It was not even remotely comparable to anything that I've experienced before. Not with Ghost of Tsushima, not with Odyssey, and certainly not with FIFA. It's sort of like comparing, I don't know, jumping into your inflatable pool in your garden with the cute girl in the neighborhood with going for a majestic swim in the ocean under the moonlight with the Little Mermaid or a band of mermaids. And this experience was my introduction with the Souls-like gaming genre. Souls-like is a term that you will quickly come to learn about if you get into gaming and if you enjoy challenging games that really engage you. The company From Software, they created the game and game series Dark Souls. And after that, they created a number of other games that were sort of similar to Dark Souls, but there are a number of things that tie these sorts of games together. The number one thing is that they are difficult. They are very, very challenging, and they are going to test your skill and also your patience. These are games in which no matter how much experience you have with gaming, you are going to die and lose a lot. And that is just inevitable. And you should not dread that experience. You should view each and every loss and death in these games as a learning experience and a learning opportunity, and you should use it to get better. And very crucially, these games have no difficulty settings. It has no easy mode and normal mode and hard mode. No, it has one difficulty level, and that is going to be the difficulty level that everybody is going to play it at. For this and other reasons as well, by the way, this gaming genre has a massive, almost cult-like community built around it. Nevertheless, these games and these types of games have become iconic, so much so that the gaming community as a whole started using the term Souls-like to describe games like this. Games that are difficult, games that are very challenging, and games, importantly, which have no difficulty settings. These are the main features that, if a game has that, they're going to start referring to it as Souls-like. Oh, and by the way, basically all of these games are action RPG games. So there are no Souls-like football games or NBA games that I know of. In all of these games, basically, you're wielding a sword and you're fighting with spears and daggers and things like that. And all of these games have, or almost all of these games have, a healthy touch or unhealthy touch of RPG to it as well. So you will have a customizable character, you can alter the way it looks, and you can definitely upgrade and level this character up over time as well. Now, the game that I started out with, mainly because I wanted something that was sort of similar in visuals and style to Ghost of Tsushima, was the game that some of the Souls community considers the hardest game that they have, and also the game that turned out to be my favorite game of all time. And that game is Sekiro. You're playing with a shinobi guy. It's not a samurai guy. It's basically like the secret spy ninja version of a samurai. You can sort of think of it like that. Basically, you're going through the game and you're engaging in sword combat with a whole host of enemies and main bosses. The main thing about this sword fight and what made this game revolutionary is that it was not just about striking your opponent as many times as you can. In fact, it was mostly not about that, but it was about how well you can defend yourself. Most of the time, the defensive mechanics that you have in these games is rather simple, and they don't overthink them. You can jump away, you can dodge away, you can just hold your sword up and block. In this game, the main thing was that you needed to block and deflect your opponent's swings at exactly the right moment. If you timed your deflections just right, first of all, it had this amazingly satisfying sword clinging sound effect. And secondly, it basically weakened your opponent. The game called it weakening your posture, as if you were attacking them. So basically, defense, and the perfectly executed defense, was a form of offense in this game. Doing this effectively required okay reflexes and a very good sense of rhythm. My sense of rhythm, if we are judging it based off this game, it's probably not remarkable. I never became that amazing at this game ever, even though, again, 400, 500, 600, 700 hours were definitely poured into this game as well. But if you did these things effectively, you could make this game look stupidly easy. I mean, some of these guys that I saw on YouTube that are like truly freakishly good at this game, I mean, they're going to appear like they are the final boss. And their opponents in the game, they look like little frail, flailing kids. Whereas if you failed to master the mechanics of this game effectively, I mean, you were in for a struggle like you never knew existed in the world of gaming. But man, when you really paid your dues and you mastered the mechanics of at least an opponent, and you could finish that opponent off while basically taking no damage, the satisfaction that you felt from that is quite difficult to put into words. This game, while it was definitely the thing that started me off on the downward spiral faster than anything else, it was an absolutely incredible experience, and an experience that I will always look back at fondly. And I don't think that's a regrettable thing either. I mean, hell, the first time I beat Lady Butterfly, if you know, you know, my ex was sitting there next to me, cheering for me. And when I was done with it, we were both standing there, looking at each other with our jaws dropped. We couldn't believe what just happened. And then this is actually serious, I ran out on the balcony and I was yelling, "Who is the king, motherfuckers?" And my ex did not think either that there was anything unreasonable about this, because she knew that this was an incredible thing that just happened. So it was a remarkable gaming experience, but it was definitely the thing that started me off on the wrong path, truly. And the way I can easily tell that that's the case is because I do remember that in April, we went on this Easter family get-together thing. My family was there, my ex's family was there. And I do remember just not ever really being fully present during this time. I was basically constantly thinking about how much I wanted to go back and play with Sekiro. Actually, in hindsight, it was a very, very lucky fact that I could not sort it out so that I could play with my console over there. Because if I could, I mean, my God, it would have been horrendous. I probably just never would have talked to anyone. I would say that this was the first time where I truly experienced how it's like when you start treating what happens inside a game as something that is bigger than just a gaming experience. I basically viewed it as a project. Like, okay, this week's project or this month's project is going to be getting through the Guardian Ape. Oh my God, it seems impossible. How am I going to do this? And I would be thinking about this not just when I was playing, but also when I was going to the gym, if I was going to the gym. Speaking of the Guardian Ape, by the way, that's a noteworthy thing, because during my struggles with the Guardian Ape was when my first, and I would say only, truly massive and highly problematic gamers raging moment occurred, during which I kicked over a coffee table. Probably the remains of the wound that I had after that is still visible on my shin. With the coffee table that I kicked over, I sent flying everything that was lying on top of that coffee table. So laptop, one of the controllers, and God knows what else. We had to have some serious conversations, of course, after that in the house. And that was the first time when my ex was expressing some genuine concerns over what this whole gaming thing is doing to me. She reminded me of my behavior and attitude during that recent family trip at the time. She reminded me of the fact that, quite simply, I was just spending all the hours and more in front of the TV and the console, and that probably something needs to change at this point. And the thing is, I was so incredibly ashamed of what I had just done. I mean, I pretty much had an anxiety attack after I kicked that coffee table over, because I honestly could not believe what I just did. I mean, I am an impulsive person and I can get very angry, but I'm not aggressive, and I just have more common sense at this point than that. And the fact that I had just done that was terrifying to me. So because of that, I was agreeing to all kinds of things that, yeah, like, let's limit these gameplay hours. Actually, we came up with the plan of only playing with these games after midnight, which that was a good idea in the sense that we needed to limit things somehow. Realistically, I should have just gotten rid of my consoles and my games. Anyways, I'm very much ashamed to say that within about 2 to 3 days, all that was left from all my promises to my ex over how my behavior was going to change was reduced to pretty much nothing. In no time, basically, I was playing with Sekiro at the time, nonstop, essentially. Eventually, of course, I did complete the game, and then I did complete it a second time and a third time and a fourth time as well. I mean, just to give you some idea as to how much time I spent with that, basically, leveling up your character in this game is incredibly slow. Like, the most you can upgrade your character by over an entire playthrough is, I believe, 14 points. So 14 points in one entire playthrough, which is not quick. Like, even the second time around, you're gonna be spending your sweet ass time with it. And with that rate of leveling up, I still got my character to level 99. So that sort of gives you some idea as to just how much time I spent with this. But eventually I ran out of things to do in this Sekiro game as well, and it was time to look forward to the next thing, which was another Souls-like game from the company From Software as well, actually. and that was Elden Ring. And my story with Elden Ring was quite similar in many ways. The gameplay and especially the combat was not nearly as good as it was in Sekiro, but in many ways it was a lot more addictive. There was a lot more things that you could do with upgrading and customizing your character, so it definitely gave you a lot of things to do. But one very noteworthy thing that happened during my time with Elden Ring is that this was the first time during which I ducked out of some social opportunity for no other reason other than just wanting to play with the game. Don't get me wrong, ducking social opportunities or social obligations, as I like to call them more typically, is nothing new to me. I'm a champion of ghosting parties, going to the toilet, and then suddenly finding myself sitting at home, not being at the crappy party anymore, is something that I'm at an absolute elite level at. But staying home for no other reason other than wanting to play with a video game is something that I had never, ever, ever, ever done in my life, ever. And this time I did it. And I did it in a way to where I'm pretty sure that I just put my phone somewhere and I put it on Do Not Disturb because I did not even want to know about how much potentially someone wants me to be there. Later, it turned out that they didn't want me to be there that badly. But even if they did, would have made no difference whatsoever. During the same weekend, I'm pretty sure I was actually alone at home. So my ex was away doing something with her family. And I remember waking myself up at an early-ish time so that I could start playing as early as possible because I wanted to complete certain things in the game before my ex would have returned home. Once again, this is something that I never ever even gotten close to, even contemplating doing before. I think it was something like 750 hours that I ended up playing with Elden Ring in total during this period, and this would have been sort of early summer-ish, I think. Whereas my gameplay hours were getting pretty bad already back in February, March. But if possible, they just got extended to a far worse level. I went from playing until 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 a.m. on occasion, maybe very occasionally even pulling an all-nighter, to more or less pulling consecutive all-nighters, if that's even possible. So I would just not go to bed on a given day. So, okay, let's say I woke up at 10 a.m. Okay, I didn't go to bed at my normal bedtime, stayed up until 10 a.m., but would still not go to bed, but I would stay up until the next night, until like 4 a.m. or something like that. What is that, like 40 hours of being awake or something like that? And I would definitely push myself to a point of exhaustion, which would actually like lead me to pretty much fall asleep while playing. Like at times I actually had to put down the console because my character in a game started just dying. Like I started like running off cliffs and things like that because I was drifting off while I was holding the console and pressing buttons. And it's also no surprise that everything that was important to me, everything that made me the person that I was, all of that just started to fade. I sort of became like a zombie, numbed down version of myself. Very, very crucially, something happened which happened tragically late, just like how I said in my earlier video that we took with my ex tragically long to move in together. We also struggled tragically long to finally go through the conversation that I wanted to have for so long. You remember the horribly troubling and emotionally debilitating problems that I was struggling with, mental and emotional problems that were related to my relationship with her that we could just not discuss effectively and from which I turned to video games in the first place. Well, guess what? Sometime in June, I believe, we finally got around to it and actually discussed that very thing. I said, listen, I can no longer go on like this. We will have to talk about this the way I prefer to talk about it, which is being fully open, fully honest, putting everything out on the table. If something is tragic or something I just cannot handle, then okay, I'm going to pack up and I'm going to leave. But if we continue like this, that's going to happen anyway, because I just cannot exist in this relationship like this anymore. And I cannot plan for the future. I cannot have a forward way of thinking while I'm bogged down by this all the time. And then somewhere around June, we finally had that big conversation that I always wanted to have. And it was incredible. It was a massive weight off my shoulders. And very interestingly, very crucially, I was sitting there at the end of it, and I was looking at her, and all I could say was, first of all, thank you. And secondly, and this is what you couldn't tell me? It was comical. So that was an incredible moment. Really a moment which, I probably will believe that until I die, that had we had that conversation back in, 2021 or something, our relationship past that point would have been entirely different. But of course, that's also something that's easy to say now. And probably there are a lot of caveats to that, which I'm not adding and cannot even think of right now. But either way, we had that conversation. So in theory, like the whole catalyst for this whole video game landslide that I got myself into was taken care of. There was no longer a need to play with video games. But did I continue playing with them? Yes, of course I did. And the thing is, I could point to a number of things. I could point to a number of difficulties that I was facing after that freshly. No longer related to my ex, related to other things. I'm not going to because it's bullshit. Because the thing is that you will never go through life without things like this being there in some form and with some severity. Like life is such that you're gonna have challenges in it always. And while some challenges cannot be faced head on by yourself and yourself alone, and sometimes even with the help of other people, you just cannot really do anything about them. For example, if a loved one dies or something like that, you can support each other or whatever, but nothing that you're gonna do is gonna like solve the problem. Like the person is gone and it's a tragedy. And you're gonna have things like this. So if you get into the mindset of, okay, I have something that struck me that's a big blow, and so I'm gonna give myself the license of just fully throwing in the towel, then it's gonna be a very difficult and slow ride forward. My biggest of the biggest burdens off my shoulder finally got lifted. So as far as I'm concerned, I absolutely had no excuse to point at anything else afterwards, at least for the upcoming 5 years or something. So I continued playing video games, and that's fully on me, and I attribute only one thing, that fact to, and that was that I was in a state of denial. I was simply not ready to be honest with myself, to myself, or to anyone else about the fact that I am just so goddamn addicted that I don't know what would have to happen to get me hooked off of this. So yeah, once we had the big conversation that I so desperately needed, after that I really started to feel deep down that is just really not very well justifiable what I'm doing at this point. And you know what? I actually didn't even try to really justify it. I was sort of acting like the kid who knows that he has homework and he knows that if he doesn't do it tonight, tomorrow he's going to be in trouble. But he's just choosing the strategy of not thinking about it. And I think that my reasons for playing this many hours, this intensely, was something that I had to realize later on. And this is something that I heard from Dr. K. He's a person who helps, again, incels, like video game addicts. He said that when he was in his heyday as a gamer, he would have to play until complete and utter exhaustion. Because if he was not completely exhausted physically, he would have to be left alone with his thoughts. And his thoughts were not taking him to a happy place, because during those times he would have to actually ask himself, what am I doing? Where is my life headed? How am I going to finish my studies? How am I going to have a career? How am I going to be a functioning human in society? I'm playing 20 hours a day. And I explained, I very often played 40 hours in one go. And the thing is that even then, so I would get myself to this point, then I would go to bed. And as I would go to bed, I would frequently have my first moments in the entire day, or maybe the previous day as well, in which I would actually just let my thoughts to just be. This was the only time when I was not actively doing something, more specifically playing games. And then all at once, all my thoughts would just flood the system. And yeah, I would have the same exact thoughts like what Dr. K was talking about. like, dude, what the hell is going to happen like this? Like, how are you going to have money? How are you going to have a functioning relationship? How are you going to do anything? Like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And like, even though I was literally falling asleep playing just a minute ago, now I would be on the brink of breaking down crying. And quite frequently, actually, I fell asleep while sobbing there pretty much. One such moment was this like mini come to Jesus moment, which was not powerful enough, but I did think it was a powerful moment at the time when I said, okay, enough is enough. I've had enough of these motherfucking snakes. Just kidding. If you know, you know. So yeah, one day when I was going to bed after an all day, all night gaming session, which, I mean, in my case, it happened to be at like 10 a.m. or something. That was my bedtime for the day. My ex just got up and got out of bed. It was on a weekend. And I went to bed, and then I texted her and asked her if she could come in for a second. And she came in, and I said to her, so that it was external and it was not just a resolution in my head to which nobody could hold me accountable. And I told her, like, listen, this has to stop, and I want to start moving back towards normalcy. And I want to play less, want to work more, want to do all the things that were important to me beforehand. I want to do more of that, and I want to fix things. And she said, yeah, like, I support you, and I think it's gonna be okay, and I believe in you. It was a very touching moment. I was very grateful for her supportive attitude, and I just said thank you and grabbed her hand, and then I went to sleep. She was still sitting there, and I just fell asleep. Just kidding. But yeah, so I mean that was the end of that conversation, and you know, a couple of days later was that video that I released last summer, in which I said, hey guys, so I was away. Video games were kind of a big thing for me in the recent past, but now it's time to like move back towards like real Abel, like let's make Abel SSD again, and not just PS5 Abel. It's difficult to recall exactly what my mindset was around that time. My best guess was that I really wanted to mean that. I really wanted to be serious and committed to this idea of, okay, let's take a step back and let's start to re-normalize things. And mind you, I did take some steps in that direction. The steps were just simply not enough. I would say that if I was intent on changing the way things panned out, and I wanted to do absolutely everything I could to save that relationship, as well as many, many other things, that's probably the time that I would travel back to with a time machine. And at that point, with that strong commitment of mine, I would sell my consoles. And I would really commit to doing things like I'm doing right now, speaking to the camera, creating content, for example. It's easy to say now. And, you know, luckily I don't really need to ponder over this too much, because looking back, it's crystal clear that, I mean, I was light years removed from doing anything remotely similar to not playing games anymore, selling my consoles, anything like that. I was absolutely not interested in living a life without video games being a significant part of it. Now, I could say a lot of things about what my mindset was at the time, but the reality is that I didn't really have a mindset anymore. I was simply spending my days in the delirium of controlling these virtual characters, and if I had any semblance of rationality left, it was simply swallowed up and lost completely in that delirium. I did have some passing thoughts about how life will be from now on, and I knew that things couldn't go on like this forever. It's just that in any given moment, it felt like the right time to make a change was always in the next moment. And since in my gamer's reality, the measuring unit of a moment is roughly 10 hours, all of a sudden I looked up and another 2 months went by with me having nothing to show for other than another 1,000 hours of gameplay. As far as my relationship was concerned, everything about that is just another confirmation that I was no longer a thinking person at this point. I think anybody listening to this will be thinking, my gosh, how did this girl last this long with this dude? And I think that too, now. Then, I clearly wasn't thinking that, because when she made her move, at last, I was genuinely shocked. Now, part of it is that I just didn't think that things were so bad for her. And for thinking this, I have some minor justifications for. I mean, I may have been hooked on my console, but I was still spending pretty much all my time with her. She was usually sitting next to me while I was playing, and we would be chit-chatting in the meantime. So in that sense, it's not like I was neglecting her. This thought process, of course, is incomplete at best and highly problematic at worst, but we can let this slip for now. But part of it was, if I'm being honest, was that I thought that I could just get away with this. I do remember thinking, man, I mean, I might not be a dream partner with how things are standing now, but I mean, show me someone in our surroundings that's better than me. And you know what? I actually don't think that I was wrong about that, but that says more about how bad our surroundings were at the time rather than how non-horrible I was. Nevertheless, with the trajectory I was presenting with my lifestyle, there would have been many moments where it would have been very understandable if she decided to call it quits. But the reality is that at this point, I still would have had so many opportunities to turn things around. But not only did I not turn things around, but I just kept banging more nails into the coffin of our relationship. Until one day, one of those nails proved to be the final one. That final nail was when we went on a vacation to Greece together. And so I'm so ashamed of this that honestly it's difficult to say this. I still need to pinch myself. Did I actually do this? But I did. We went to Greece for a vacation, just the two of us with my ex. And I took my console with me, and I spent most of that time in a room playing with my console. Yep, that actually happened. I made it happen. So later on, when we had the final dramatic conversations, and she told me that was the final nail in the coffin. Honestly, all I could say is, fair fucking enough. In fact, I made a promise to her repeatedly as we were going through our separation that one day I'm gonna buy her the most amazing holiday experience with her new guy, new husband, new whatever. But I owe her that experience because what I did there was absolutely unacceptable. And that is definitely one of those things that I will just forever carry with me. And I never cease to feel the shame that one is ought to feel when you do something like this. Because, it is just absolutely horrendously, pathetically horrible. It's really difficult to talk about this without going into rather inappropriate amount of detail into how exactly the ending of our relationship unfolded. One thing I will say is that when things ended, or when we first separated at least, my understanding at the time was that the reasons for that were mostly down to this horrible year, really, in which I was consumed by this whole gaming shit, and that she could just not trust me that I would end it. So it made sense to me. I was quite sure that it was mainly about this whole gaming issue. Later conversations that we had pointed elsewhere, and she said that this was only the final nail in the coffin. It's hard to say, and it really doesn't really matter anymore. Because the reality is that, number one, if she had not ended things then, like I said before, probably I would not have stopped with playing video games. It's really easy to tell just how much that is the case, because even while I was packing up my stuff and I was leaving the apartment that we used to live in for many years, while I was full of all kinds of resolutions in my head and plans on how I'm going to improve myself and how I'm actually going to win her back. So there's no question that I will have to be the best freaking possible version of myself. But I was still thinking about how I'm going to pack up the consoles. And actually my move to actually turn around and say, you know what, I'm not going to take these, actually sell these. That was not even a move that came from some thoughts and feelings that were really rooted deep down. It was more so just a gesture to impress her, honestly. It was only afterwards. So when I said it, after that, I really started to think. And as I started to think, for the first time, I could actually be honest with myself. Okay, there's no point of trying to fool anybody, even myself, from now on, because the consoles will be gone. I said it, sell the console. So like, there's obviously no way of coming back from that now. I mean, that would be ridiculous. So what has really been going down? And then it started to dawn on me, like just what the hell? And that's when I thought about the Greece thing as well. Like what I did there, like dude, like what the actual fuck were you doing there? Like, are you serious? Dude, this was like grade 1 million or grade Z plus in terms of how addicted you were. Like, you're a sick person. You're not okay. Like, you might need rehab or something, which actually is not as absurd as it might sound, because like 1 or 2 months after the fact, I still had moments where I would be driving around somewhere and I would listen to a podcast. I would have like flashback moments because I would recall what I was specifically doing in a game like Neo 2, for example, at a particular moment in that podcast. One final thought I have about all this in retrospect is that once you dabbled with something for a long time, you can get yourself into a spiral in which you start burying yourself inside your bad habit just so that you can avoid having to face the mess that you created in your life while you were absent from and neglected your duties. Because it's not like time just stands still while you're doing nothing else but hold a console in your hands. I neglected both my YouTube channel and my business, deep down, of course, knowing that picking up where I left off wouldn't be that simple. To even come close to where I was a year ago, let alone improve upon it, I'd need to work harder and possibly take a different approach entirely. But how do you begin to make plans and create strategies for these things when you feel like you're just not the same person anymore? It used to be easy to strategize around content for my channel because fitness, healthy lifestyle, and self-improvement was all I ever thought about. Now, all I ever thought about was whether I should go for a dexterity build or a faith build in my action RPG of choice at the time. Probably even my reluctance to take steps to save my relationship was partly down to my fear of what was there to come. I knew that as soon as I was declared okay, it would be time to start some serious conversations about producing little Abels, if you know what I mean. But am I ready for that when clearly I'm the biggest mess that I've ever been? Sorry, I know that this is like next level TMI, but I do this to really get the point across that if you take an extended vacation from real life and then you don't return home in time, it's inevitable that you will be back for some mess. And at that point, you will have to make a decision. Are you ready to face this mess? Or you'd rather opt for being thrown out of the messy house? In my case, quite literally. Both choices will come with some brutal difficulties. In both cases, things might have to get worse before they get better. But one thing is for sure, once you reach a point of realization that you are indeed facing this choice, extending your sabbatical even further is no longer an option. I refuse to accept this reality for too long, which I guess is also a common pitfall. It's similar to putting off calling someone back that you should have called back a long time ago, to where now you're simply not calling the person because you didn't call the person so far. But does the person stop waiting just because you got yourself into this mess? They might, and that's when you really have a problem. That's the crucial part of waking up from escapism. You don't return to the life you left, you return to what it's become without you. And the longer you stay away, the less of a life there is to return to. Really, her ending our relationship, it was the most painful thing perhaps ever that I've experienced. It was brutal. Losing her, who was much more at that point than just a romantic partner, an unimaginably huge blow. Add on top of the fact that I had to move back to the country from where I left really, 12, 13 years ago. I was basically a stranger. Everything just felt weird over here. Like, really, the longest time that I spent here was a week or something in the last, I don't know how many years. I became quite distant from most of the people that I knew here. Yeah, that's a funny thing as well. My childhood best friend, who was one of the very, very few secure anchors in my life, decided to basically also like break up with me as I was going through the separation, and I moved back to Hungary. So like that was very fortunate timing, you might say. So there's no surprise that I felt like my head was just pushed under the water. And I would say that there's not many things that I can be proud of out of all of this. But if there's one thing that I'm proud of, is that during this time, I did not even consider returning to gaming and returning to my old bad habits, or not old, my very recent bad habits that I just gave up. It would have been easier than ever to resort to that, because there was certainly more than just a little bit of pain that I wanted to suppress. But I didn't, and it's not even that I'm proud of it, it's just a reassuring thing to be able to say, because that gives me more hope and more optimism for the future. I cannot even imagine like where things would be and how things would be. Like, let's imagine an alternate scenario in which she is like too weak or too emotional to make the move that she eventually made. Would I be still lying on the same sofa, still playing games, not having done anything else? Like, it's really scary to imagine, because honestly, I just don't really see how and why the situation would have changed. Like, I guess I could see a situation in which she like really puts her foot down and says like, listen, like the fucking consoles need to go now. But the thing is that like I'm quite good at, as we say in Hungarian, to explain your bad grades. Like I'm very good at making a compelling argument for anything if my neck is really on the line. And man, like if at that point like someone wanted to take away my consoles and that someone was not me, like voluntarily giving it up, like they would have to put up one hell of a fight and one hell of an argument. And it's not easy to out-argue me during those moments. So yeah, the scary thing is that like I really think that with this move that she made, she like really gave me a second chance to like, okay, dude, your life started going down the toilet at exactly the wrong time. Like this is the time when you should like actually like start to stabilize things, not just build things up, but now you even stabilize, and now you have a solid platform to start building families and stuff like that. Like now is the time in which you started going downhill like this, like a teenager would during a summer holiday that gets out of hand. But listen, like we gave you the ultimate slap in the face. We shook you as hard as we could. We being life in general, I guess. Get your shit together. Like make something of yourself. Like you're capable of more than this. And here's another chance for you. Like you're in a very good position still to improve things, but do it finally. Honestly, that's what it is. This whole drama that transpired, my relationship ending, it will never be not tragic that it happened, but it will also never not be a second chance that I got. And while I can already say that, okay, I stepped on a path that is infinitely more productive and more promising than the trajectory that I was on at the time, but I cannot yet say that, okay, like look at all these amazing things that I did since then. It wouldn't have been without that drama and tragedy at the time. Hopefully one day I will get to say that as well. But I guess we will have to wait and see. I would say that if I wanted to write a couple of soundbite-like life lessons that I took away from this whole thing, it would be these two. Number one, for the person who's always had second and third chances, the most valuable experience might be finally losing the chance to make things right. And then the second one would be, some sayings are true but incomplete. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But no one tells you that surviving can feel like the worst part. Still, if you can make it through that, you won't come out the same. You'll actually come out stronger. So yeah, roughly that is my long and not so beautiful story with gaming. I do think that games are incredible. I mean, some people should probably get some Nobel Prizes for some of these creations. I mean, the person who designed and created the combat mechanics of Sekiro should get a Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel War Prize, if that exists. The person who created Ghost of Tsushima, and probably every person who worked on that should get all the Nobel Prizes in the world. The person who designed and created the RPG mechanics of Neo 2 should probably also get some sort of Nobel Prize, but at the same time go to hell and to some deeper depths of that. But still, it is one of the more severe addiction cases that I can talk about over my lifetime so far. I never knew that this could impact me to this degree. I never thought that this could happen to me. But just like in the case of disordered eating, just like in the case of porn addiction, and a few more addictions, or well, those were the main ones really, I had to learn that, okay, like, yes, it does cause addiction, and it causes that addiction because it's amazing. That's the common thing with all things that are addictive. Nobody gravitates towards anything that causes addiction just because they feel like getting addicted to something. No, like all of these things share one thing, and it's that they are remarkable in many ways. So it's a big lesson learned. This was more than just a phase. It was more than just a period in which I was weaker or I was laxing. No, like this is a chapter of my life. It's nothing less than that. It's a significant chapter with very significant aftermaths and consequences, and also prequels. So the things that led to it were also significant, invaluable learning experience. I will never be the same person again that I was before I went through all of this. So the concept of gaming, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. You have to recognize it for what it can do. It has the potential to cause you a lot of joy and unspeakable pain if you lose control over it. You have to know yourself as well. Are you someone like me, prone to addiction? If you are, tread lightly. And I don't say that lightly, but I think that was a good kind of all-rounder for the topic of video games. Please let me know what you thought of all of this. Very curious of personal anecdotes, inputs. I'm sure a lot of you will be able to relate to at least some of what I was talking about here. And yeah, let's pick up from here. And hopefully next time we will take one more step towards some more fitness-y topic. I mean, this was more related to fitness, right? I mean, at least in those games I'm running around. That's kind of physical, more physical than just talking about my my failed love life. So yeah, that was it for today. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.